Alrighty. So, let's see. Where's my first slide? There we go. So, seemed reasonable since tomorrow's Mother's Day to talk about mothers. There's a lot going on in Scripture, so I can't cover it all, but you know, hopefully it's kind of interesting. There are so many verses throughout the Bible that reference mothers, either directly or within a story, an imagery type of thing. So I'd like to take you through this. So I think, you know, if you're going to start something, where should you start? At the beginning. That makes sense to me. So in the beginning, there was Adam and Eve. So let's start there. Genesis 3:20. And Adam named his wife Eve, or Hava, because she became the mother of all living. So Hava actually means life giver. So, mother of all the living makes sense. He named her appropriately. You remember he had to name all the animals? He had to name everything. Think of all the things he had to name. Yeah, he was very creative that way. So, this verse establishes motherhood as part of the creation plan, right at the very, very beginning. And the thing that I've found out over the years is that in our DNA, science has showed that that we all have one common genetic marker from one particular woman. Isn't that fascinating? How did that happen? Oh, it must have been Hava, because she is the mother of all the living. Gee. The Bible knew that all along, and it's just we're just now figuring it out. But you know, better late than never. So in Exodus 20, we see another thing talking about honoring your father and mother, and a lot of people just stop right there. But what about the rest of the story? So that your days are prolonged upon the soil which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. This is a core commandment that emphasizes respecting and valuing our parents, okay? Parents should be treated, we look into that word, the idea in a noble way, with honor. Does that mean you're always going to agree with them? No, it's not, absolutely not. But the second part is about the child, right? It's about the offspring. Prolonging your life, to live longer, to draw out your life, that happens when you are honoring, respecting, not disrespecting your parents. Interesting thought. So could we say that the opposite would be true? If you do not respect your parents, if you don't treat them right, then your life will be shortened. Something to think about. Now, my particular family, I can look back through, like my mom's, all her siblings, and she lived to be 99, and she outlived all of them by quite a bit. And I know a lot of personal stories about why some of them probably died pretty young. It's not like, you know, anyway, that's a whole nother story, but it's just one of those things in my family, I can kind of see that by looking back at history. Do we have a second witness? Yes, we do. We always want a second witness. Ephesians 6:1, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Now I must stop right there for a moment. Obey your parents. The idea of obeying is to listen attentively. By implication, it's the idea of heeding what they say, conforming to command or their authority. And that's one thing you learn in the military. You might not respect the person, but you respect their position. And sometimes we gotta bite the bullet on that and say, you know, they're in the position. I shouldn't be giving them a lot of lip. So, respecting their position. Their position gives them a certain amount of authority as long as you are in their home, at the very least. So then it goes on and it says, in the Lord. Okay. So in the Lord. If your parents, one or all of them, were not believers, they were something else, anti, Bible all the way, they probably said and did some things that you were like, I don't really want to go along with that. That's a tough place to be. And yet there's many, many people that grow up with parents that are not godly, right? So does that mean you shouldn't follow what they have to say? See, that's where you get in a real dilemma, isn't it? As a child, you still have to respect that position. As an adult, you might not go along with what they say, but you shouldn't disrespect them. Right? So, and why should you do that? Well, again, it's repeated again, to honor your father and your mother, okay? And then the next part is an interesting thing to bring your attention, in case you missed it, which is the first commandment with a promise. Wow, okay. So the promise, what's the promise? Well, in order that it might go well with you, so that you'll have a good life as long as it is, and prolong it a little longer, hanging around. So the idea of not only having a long life, but having a good life, having a life that is well done. It's working, right? These are promises, but this isn't a one and done. My mom lived to be 99. It was getting a little tough there towards the end when she wasn't really remembering who I was all the time, you know? Those are tough moments where you just want to, not be respectful. And yet, was that her fault? No. It was just age. So this is a tough deal, but it's something we all need to try to wrap our heads around. It's not easy to do that. But even in the Greek, if we go back to what is it talking about, to honor or be respectful of your parents, it means to prize them, to have a value placed upon them. They're valuable to you, as opposed to, I'm leaving home and I'm never going to talk to you again. I've heard lots of people say that, right? It's like, that's not a good place to be. You might want to bridge that gap before you lose them. I guarantee you, those of you who still have your parents, you will have moments where you wish you would have said one more thing, you would have done one more thing. So, I have those thoughts with my dad, and I have some of those thoughts with my mom, and it's just, you can't do anything about it once they're gone. So, do it while you can. Say what you need to say while you can. Do those little things. Make those phone calls when they don't live anywhere near you. It makes their day, and it is part of that idea of showing that they are valuable and not forgotten. Okay? All right. So do we have any more witnesses on this? Well, yeah. I mean, even Yeshua said we need to not break the commands of Torah. In Matthew 15:3, Yeshua said, he's talking to Pharisees, by the way, he said, why do you break the command of God for the sake of your tradition? And you could add in there, or your feelings, or your offenses. Yeah. Is there any reason why we should be breaking the command of God? From his perspective, no, there really isn't, no matter what your excuses are. So, Then he goes on to say, for God said, honor your father and mother, and anyone who curses his father and mother must be put to death. And then he goes on to talk about, what they were doing specifically, about not helping out their parents with money because they were giving it to the church, so to speak, the temple. And he called them hypocrites. They were nullifying the commands of God for what they wanted the people to do. That is happening today. There are many organizations that tell you don't have to do things that God says, yeah, you do. And Yeshua says, if you love me, you will obey my commands. When he said that, there was no New Testament. So the only commands that are in Torah. So, again, hypocrites. Ouch. I don't want to be called a hypocrite. Woo. So be careful that you don't come up with excuses why you don't want to follow a command that's pretty clear. Because most of them are pretty clear. Yeah. So, mothers, in Proverbs 1:8, this verse highlights the wisdom and moral foundation that mothers provide. It says, listen, my son, to your father's instructive warnings. Okay? So, we're supposed to listen to Dad. He's got some good advice. And do not forsake the teaching of your mother. What? Moms are teaching? Back in those days? Really? How about that? Now, of course, the mother in the Lord would be teaching what? She's teaching her children, and that word there, if you look it up, is Torah. She's teaching Torah. So do not forsake the Torah of your mother. And you're like, well, my mom didn't do Torah. Okay, but she probably taught you a few things that are helped you along in life, right? We can at least go there. And then it goes on to say, they, meaning the teachings of your mother, are a garland of graciousness around your head and a pendant around your neck. So, think of that. That word there of the garland is something attached. It's a pendant or a necklace or a chain. In other words, it's something that is showing. It's on your head, it's around your neck. It's showing everyone around you sees you walking out the teachings of your mother. Which, if she was in the Lord, then that would be Torah. And then we see this brought up again in Timothy. 2 Timothy 1:5 says, Shaul is talking to Timothy, giving him a little guidance. He did quite a bit of that. I recollect the sincere belief which is in you, which dwelt first in your grandmother, Lois, and in your mother, Eunice. And I am persuaded it is in you too. So when he says, I believe, I see this in you, belief is a moral conviction of the truthfulness of seeing God in him. That's what he's actually saying. Now later on, Shaul continues in 2 Timothy 3:14 and 15. But you say, in what? You say, but you stay in what you have learned and trusted, having known from whom you have learned. Again, referring back to his mother and grandmother. And that from a babe, so a little kid, he's been taught this stuff, that from a babe you have known the set apart scriptures, which are able to make you wise for deliverance through belief in Messiah Yeshua. So mothers are a source of moral and spiritual instruction, and they literally shape the generational faith and destiny of their children. You could say even if they're not doing Torah, they're still shaping their children and where they're going. For Timothy, we see the legacy. His faith didn't just appear out of nowhere or suddenly happen as soon as he met Shaul. It was passed down from his mother and his grandmother to Timothy. So he had a generational discipleship going on. And some of you have been blessed with generational discipleship going on in your family, but not everyone. But it does happen. But that's why, even though Shaul told Timothy, even though you're young, don't worry about that. You've had this pumped into you since you were a little babe. You know it. You believe it. Walk in it, right? It's not something new for you, where you only know things superficially. You've been walking this out your whole life. So think about this. A mother's influence may not be loud or public or look like a big deal, but her quiet faith will shape the next generation and give it a spiritual foundation. Think about the prodigal son, right? He was given a foundation, then he said, I did that too. I had a really great foundation. Then I left home and I got a little crazy. But like the prodigal son, I came back, right? I came back and said, this is for the pigs. I don't want to be here anymore. So that foundation, train up a child as they should go, and they will come back to it. So don't get too concerned when your children go left turn. Keep praying, they'll come back. They'll come back if they got that foundation. And really, everything we do in Torah is foundational. It's building one thing on the next. We also see in Titus where we're supposed to be spiritual moms to each other, okay? Older women, likewise, are to be reverent in their behavior, because it was just talking about the men before this. Not slanderers or addicted to too much wine, but teachers of good. That's what we're supposed to do. So, all you got people with a little gray in your hair, this is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be teaching. In this way, you can train the young women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled, pure. What does that mean in our society? Managers of their households, kind, and submissive to their own husbands. That doesn't mean they're a doormat. That's a whole nother message, okay? So it just means somebody's got to lead. It's the man. So that the word of God will not be discredited. That's really important. The last thing in the world I want to do is have people know that I'm a believer and then do things and say things that totally ruin your testimony, so to speak. Right? So many of you may have not had generations of discipling through your lineage, but there's still opportunity, right? There's always opportunity to be discipled by spiritual mothers. Right. So, got a little gray in your hair. Wait. Some people will come with questions. Then we have Proverbs 31 woman. You could do so much with this entire proverb, but just kind of bringing it down. It's describing the virtuous woman and mother. Proverbs 31:26. She shall open her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the Torah of loving kindness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. So whenever I hear this one, I always think about my mom. She was a pretty strict disciplinarian, but you know what? I have to say she was always fair in the way she corrected me. I always knew exactly what I'd done wrong. Might not have agreed, but I knew what she considered that's a no-go. That one's a no-go. Because before I got punished, she'd sit me down, she goes, do you know why you're being punished? I'm like, no. Or sometimes, yes, okay, it was obvious on that one. So when we see the Proverbs 31 woman, this is why this is many people, groups, Judaism, do the Proverbs 31, or at least parts of it, on Friday nights. The husband blesses the wife with part of Proverbs 31 because it's so powerful. I don't know. I mean, she's making her own money. She's buying and selling. She's not a doormat. She's active, really active. And it's just if you haven't read it lately, read it again. It'll encourage you a lot. But she's nurturing, she's teaching, she fears the Lord. Her character and faith bear fruit. It's not just in provision and caring for the family, but the spiritual maturity of her household. Mothers have a huge impact on the household. You know? So a godly mother builds legacy not only by what she does, but by who she is in the Lord. And those are the things that you remember when they're gone. You really do. I know one of the things that I'll always remember about my mom, towards the end, she was living with me, and I heard her talking in a room, and I thought, oh, crud, she's on the phone with somebody that's trying to sell her something, you know. So I opened the door and I stopped because then I realized she was praying out loud, talking to the Father. Oh, that's a private moment. I'll shut that door again. But it touched me. It touched me a lot because I thought, she's not praying quietly. She's praying loud and bold. Talk to me, Lord. I'm talking to you. And I just thought, that's pretty cool. She never got tired doing that. At 99, come on, she's just carrying on having a conversation with the Lord. How awesome is that? So did I have any doubt where she was going? Did she have any doubt where she was going? I don't think so. I don't think so. So, a spiritually rooted mother plays a big role in the earthly journey of even the most divine calling. Think about Miriam, Mother Mary, mother of Yeshua. You think she had any what? I mean, think about it. She's trying to guide her son, her firstborn. She didn't have practice on anybody else. It's her firstborn. And she knows who he is. Yet she's supposed to be guiding him. Wow. That's some mothering there. I mean, you got to give her a lot of credit. It's like, wow. So, you remember this when he went to the temple, when he is of bar mitzvah age? And he doesn't leave when everybody else leaves and they freak out because they're a day down the road because there's so many people going back to Galilee. They don't know till it's supper time that he's not there. And they're freaking out. Can you imagine? You know, have you ever lost your kid even for 5 minutes? Scary. Where'd they go? Who took them, right? Are they okay? But here's Mary talking. She says, and his mother, talking about Yeshua, son, why have you done this to us? Why did you not come with us? You know. Why did you do this to us? I think it's so funny. You did this to your parents. And he's like, what? I was at my father's house. He was confused. Do you ever remember being confused on anything as a child? I do. One time with my grandmother, I did something I wasn't supposed to. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember that she told me to go outside and get a switch. And I didn't know what a switch was. So I went outside and I looked around and I thought, what the heck is a switch? Because I had never been spanked with a switch. No framework with there whatsoever. And so finally I came back in and I said, I couldn't find one. She said, well, I'll find one. And then I found out what a switch was. Oh no, that's not fun. So things and we don't really realize what we're doing, especially as children. Yeah, but you know, she's like, we've been looking for you, and now they went a day out, now they're a day back. He's been without his parents a couple of days. Wow, okay. But he's like, what up? I'm in my father's house. I don't get it. But he immediately obeyed them. He's like, oh, this was not good for you. Oops. So he immediately went with them to Nazareth and was subject to them because they were in the position of authority. Now think about that. The Son of God said, okay, I'm with you, Mom, sorry. Wow. But then Mary, it says, she kept all these things in her heart. Moms keep all kinds of little treasured moments in their hearts. They might not talk about them very much, but I heard a few from my mom towards the end that I'd never heard before. She started telling me things that she had not, you know, she remembers something and then tell it. And I was like, wow, you kept that all these years. And that's what it says Mary was doing. And I'll bet hit Yeshua growing up, she just saw moment after moment of, oh my gosh, look who my son is, look what he's doing. It's amazing. So it's important for us to, you know, think about Yeshua did this too. He goofed up occasionally, but when he realized it was a problem, he submitted himself back to his parents because that's what the Torah says we do. So submit yourself to their authority, even if you disagree with them. It didn't sound like he agreed with them, but there was a problem. But from their perspective, it was. Okay? Then we have Hannah. Remember the story? She wanted a child, and she was barren, and she prayed fervently for a child, and then she vowed to dedicate that child to the Lord if he would give her a little boy. So, and of course, you know, Lynnell was there, and she was just carrying on, and he, so much so he thought she was drunk. What are you doing in here drunk praying? Well, that's kind of crazy, but that's not what she was doing. And so after Samuel was born, little Samuel, she fulfilled her vow, and she entrusted him to the Lord's service in the temple. And he grew up with the priests in the temple. Now, what kind of spiritual legacy was that for Hannah? Think about it. Samuel became one of the greatest prophets and leaders in Israel. He was amazing. So sometimes a mother has to surrender and do things that she would prefer not to do. Giving that boy up was not something she wanted to do, but she said, hey, you give him to me, I'll give him back. So when you do things as a mother sacrificially for your children, that's a starting point for divine destiny to happen in their lives. You might not see it for years and years, but it's still there. You've planted that seed. You've set them up for spiritual success. How cool is that? Now, elderly parents. Proverbs talks about that too. Proverbs 3:22. Listen. That word there, shema, and you can do a whole sermon on that, is to listen intelligently, to understand, and to be obedient. It encompasses all those things. So listen to your father who brought you forth, and do not despise or disrespect your mother when she is old. So as you can see, there are repeated calls to honor and respect your mother, well, both your parents, and their sacred role. Whether they did it in a good way or a bad way, it's still, that was their role, and we, you know, you think, well, I do it differently. Well, you maybe you will, maybe you won't, but it's still, you weren't in their circumstances at that moment. You know, it's like we can all point a finger at other people. Oh, they shouldn't be doing that. They should be doing that. But you're not walking their shoes. You don't know their lives, their experiences, what's going on with them right now. You don't know how the Lord is working with them either. So we need to be careful when we point that one finger, three are pointing back, you know, that idea. But parenting is a sacred role. So there really are no loopholes in Scripture for being disrespectful to your parents, even when you disagree with them. That you don't have to comply as an adult with everything they say, but you don't need to be disrespectful when you say, I disagree. Let's have a conversation about that. You know, the idea of, we usually say, you know, steel sharpens steel. In Judaism, they call it pilpul. You can have a fairly heated discussion with someone, or you should be able to, and not have hard feelings and want to punch them out. Unfortunately, in our society, that's getting more and more challenging. You can't disagree with anybody without them calling you names. But that is not biblical, and you should make sure that even if you disagree with your parents as an adult, that you stay respectful of them, even if you can't get your point through, get your point across. Because you will learn something about them if you can keep them from shutting down and just getting angry with you. So, you know, how you have your heated discussions makes a huge difference on the outcomes many, many times. Alrighty, so some thoughts to ponder. What kind of faith have you seen passed down through your family? Was it good? Was it distorted? Did they not bother? I'm not asking anyone to answer that, just something to think about. Because I think sometimes we need to stop and think about, in my family, okay, they didn't do much over here, but oh yeah, there was that one aunt over there, you know, whatever. To think about, you might have some family legacy there that you need to tap back into, that you've never really paid that much attention to. And then of course, even more importantly, are you intentionally modeling your faith to the next generation? You tell the kids to go play a game, you set them in front of the TV, you tell them go away, this is for adults, or do you bring them along? Do you talk to them? Do you do godly things? Or do they see you bending the rules? In this, it's okay. It's a little white lie. It's okay. It's okay. Is it? How are you role modeling for the next generation? And you don't even need to be a mom for that. When you're around children, period. What are we doing? And sometimes you got to stop yourself and say, oh, children. Should I be saying that? Should I be doing that? Right? They're little sponges. They hear a lot more than you realize. And then later on you go, where did they hear that? Where did they get that from? Well, I don't know. Where did they get that from? So let me just thank all the moms and potential moms, spiritual and literal moms, for showing all of us the beauty of true love. There's nothing more powerful than a mom's love, and teaching and modeling true faith. Thank you.